Welcome to Tales of the Bard. Step into a world where stories come alive and imagination knows no bounds. Join me as I weave enchanting tales reminiscent of the bards of old, sharing legends, myths, and original stories that will transport you to distant lands and forgotten times.
The fire crackles, casting flickering shadows across the faces of those gathered in the dimly lit tavern. I stand tall, lute in hand, and with a solemn look I begin to pluck the strings, playing a slow, thoughtful melody. The patrons lean in, drawn by the promise of another tale, their eyes reflecting the glow of the hearth. Gather round, dear friends, and let me spin you a tale not of war nor of battle, but of the ancient Druids, those guardians of nature who walk a path as old as the world itself. At the heart of their power lies a secret, one that stretches across the land like a web of roots, the mighty Blue Tree network. Long before men built cities of stone and metal, before empires rose and fell, there was a vast and endless forest, a wild place where nature's voice could be heard in every breeze, and creatures of the world roamed free. Deep within this forest stood the heartwood of Eldara, a tree unlike any other. Its bark shimmered in a deep mystical blue, and its roots reached into the very heart of the earth. Its leaves glowed faintly, even in the darkest nights, and the ancient magic that pulsed through it was a gift from the earth spirits themselves. This tree, my friends, is no ordinary tree, but a beacon of power. The Druids, those who can speak to the birds and beasts, who see the world through the eyes of nature, have protected the heartwood for generations untold. It is from this tree that their power flows, their connection to the natural world deepened by the ancient magic of the land. But the heartwood of Eldara is not alone. Oh no, for you see, it is merely the heart of a vast network. Across the land, from the highest peaks to the deepest valleys, grows a network of smaller blue trees, each connected to the heartwood by magical ley lines buried deep beneath the earth. These trees, known as way trees, form the backbone of the Druids' domain, their roots carrying whispers of the wind, songs of birds, and the secrets of the earth. Now you may wonder, why is this network so important? What makes it so vital to the Druids and their ancient ways? It is because, through this network, the Druids possess a power unmatched by any in the land. Through these trees they can travel in the blink of an eye, stepping from one tree to another as if they are walking through a door. I pause, letting the weight of the words settle in, the patron's eyes wide with wonder. The soft strumming of my lute fills the brief silence before I continue. This power is known as tree walking, a rare and sacred gift. A druid, standing before a way tree, need only close their eyes and whisper to the ancient magic within. In an instant, they are transported across the land, appearing at another way tree as though no distance separates them. Through this, they watch over the forests, the valleys, the rivers, and the plains, protecting the balance of nature, guiding the lost, and guarding the world from threats unseen. But not just any druid can harness this power. No, only those who have earned the trust of the heartwood itself are given the gift of tree walking. It is said that the tree chooses those who are pure of heart, those who are in perfect harmony with nature. Once chosen, a druid is forever bound to the heartwood, able to hear its whispers even in their dreams. The network of blue trees is not merely a means of travel. Oh no, it is so much more than that. The Druids use the network to communicate, sharing knowledge across great distances, their voices carried by the trees themselves. They can sense disturbances in the balance of nature, feel when the earth is wounded, when a forest is burned, or a river runs dry. Through this network, the Druids are always connected, no matter how far apart they may be. And then there is the heartwood of Eldara itself, the source of all their power. It is said that the heartwood is not merely a tree, but a living entity, ancient beyond comprehension and wise beyond mortal reckoning. It chooses those who may walk its paths, those who may defend its secrets. For those who betray its trust, the consequences are dire. There are stories, whispered in the darkest corners of the tavern, of those who sought to corrupt the heartwood, to steal its power for their own twisted purposes. But none who attempted such folly have ever returned. Some say the tree consumed them. Others say they became part of the network, lost forever in the roots and branches, wandering in the darkness between the trees, their souls bound to the heartwood for eternity. But, my friends, For all its power, the Blue Tree network is also fragile. Should one of the way trees be destroyed, the ley lines would be severed and the power of the network weakened. And should the heartwood itself ever fall? I pause, my voice dropping to a whisper. The very balance of nature would crumble, and with it the world as we know it. I let the words hang in the air, the patrons sitting in rapt silence. The fire flickers low, casting long shadows across the tavern walls. And so the Druids continue their watch, tending to the trees, protecting the land, and guarding the secrets of the heartwood. For as long as the blue trees stand, there is hope that nature's balance will endure. With that, I pluck the final note on my lute, letting it fade into the stillness of the room. The story settles over the audience like a gentle fog, and I bow my head, leaving them to ponder the ancient magic of the Druids and the blue trees that bind the world together. The young boy wandered deeper into the Mire of Shattered Souls, his small feet sinking into the cold, sticky mud with every step. The air was thick and heavy, as though it were trying to smother him, and the oppressive mist clung to his skin, chilling him to the bone. Every breath felt damp and strained, as though the very swamp was drawing the warmth from his body. His heart pounded in his chest, a drumbeat of panic that grew louder with each passing moment. He couldn't see the sun, couldn't hear anything but the squelching of his own footsteps and the occasional distant splash that made him jump. He wasn't sure what had made the sound, but his mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. The trees loomed above him like twisted giants, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, their thick trunks draped in hanging moss. Shadows danced at the edges of his vision, dark shapes that moved when he wasn't looking directly at them. Were they real, or was it just his mind playing tricks on him? His hands shook as he clutched the little stick he had picked up earlier, the only thing he could find that might offer some sort of defence. His throat felt dry despite the humid air, a lump forming as fear wrapped tighter around him. I should have listened, he muttered under his breath, his voice barely audible, swallowed by the endless expanse of the swamp. The stories had seemed like tales meant to scare, warnings given by the village elders to keep children close to home. But now, out here, those stories felt very real. He blinked back tears, his vision blurring. He wanted to scream for help, but something deep inside warned him not to. There were things here, things that listened, and he didn't want to call them to him. The silence was almost worse. It was too still, too quiet, as though the swamp was waiting, watching. The boy's chest tightened with dread as he stumbled forward, his legs growing weak. The fog thickened, making it harder to see, and the path behind him, if there ever had been one, was swallowed by the mire. There was no going back now. Suddenly something cold brushed against his leg. He gasped and jumped back, heart racing. Looking down, he saw only a vine curling in the water, or was it? His breath came in shallow gasps as he looked around, his pulse thundering in his ears. He could feel the swamp pressing in on him, a living thing, its darkness whispering at the edges of his mind. He was lost, and the swamp knew it. Ronan, son of Darian and Alera, had followed his younger brother Loran into the swamp, his brother running and screaming that he must get to the light. Somehow the light was calling him. But no one else could see the lights that Loran spoke of. Now Ronan stood trembling in the thick, oppressive fog of the Mire of Shattered Souls. He instinctively reached for the small pendant hanging from a leather cord around his neck, the one his mother had given him before he left the farm. He'd almost forgotten it was there, tucked beneath his shirt, but now it seemed to pulse with a faint warmth against his skin, a tiny flicker of hope in the cold, uncaring swamp. The amulet was simple, a smooth stone with an intricate pattern etched into its surface, barely noticeable unless you knew to look. When Alera had given it to him, her green eyes had sparkled with hope, as though she already sensed he would be a druid one day. She had said it was a stone of the verdant circle, passed down through their family, a relic from the ancient druids. She had told him, with a solemn look in her eyes, that it had once summoned ancient spirits of the forest to guide and protect those in need. He hadn't really believed her back then, thinking it was just an old story, but now, standing alone, lost in the mire, he clung to that possibility. The warmth from the stone seemed to grow stronger, as though it could sense his fear. He remembered his mother's words. "When you're in the darkest place, child, when all seems lost, press your hand to the amulet and call on the spirits. They will hear you, even if no one else can." Swallowing his fear, Ronan pulled the amulet from under his shirt and held it in his trembling hands. The stone gave off a faint green glow, like the last light of dusk before night fully claimed the sky. His heart pounded, unsure of what he was about to do, but there was no other choice. He closed his eyes, focusing on the warmth of the stone, and whispered the words his mother had taught him, though they felt strange and foreign on his tongue. The words seemed to vibrate in the air, almost humming, as though they were alive. "Spirits of the green, hear me. I call to the circle. I seek the light in the dark. Guide me, protect me, show me the way." For a moment, nothing happened, and Ronan's heart sank. Had he said it wrong? Had he been too late? As he struggled through the thick fog of the Mire of Shattered Souls, his legs trembling with exhaustion and fear, he heard the sound of something heavy cutting through the muck. His heart leapt into his throat, another predator, surely. But the sound that followed wasn't a growl or hiss. It was the steady thud of heavy footsteps, resolute and unwavering, echoing against the oppressive silence of the swamp. Emerging from the mist was a stout figure, a dwarf whose frame was solid and imposing, clad in sturdy, intricately crafted armour that gleamed like forge fire. The dwarf's beard was mahogany-coloured and long, braided neatly, and his bright eyes sparkled with determination. He wielded a sturdy axe at his side, a symbol of his formidable strength. "Stay where you are, lad," the dwarf called, his voice booming with authority and warmth, cutting through the oppressive silence of the mire. "You're in a dangerous place, but you'll be safe now." Ronan's heart surged with hope as he turned toward the dwarf, overwhelmed by a mix of relief and awe. "Hold on," Thrain shouted as he quickly uncoiled a thick rope from his belt. Without hesitation, he tossed one end of the rope toward Ronan, the sturdy length of it sailing through the air before landing just within the boy's reach. "Grab hold." With trembling hands, Ronan seized the rope, feeling its rough texture against his skin. "Now what?" he called back, his heart pounding. "Wrap it around your waist," Thrain instructed, his voice steady and commanding. "I'll pull you out." Ronan hurriedly tied the rope around himself, securing it tightly. "I'm ready," he shouted, his voice a mix of fear and excitement. "On the count of 3, Thrain said, bracing himself against the bank. 1, 2, 3. With a firm grip on the rope, Thrain pulled with all his might, his muscles straining against the weight of the mire. Ronan felt the rope tighten around him as he was lifted slowly from the muck. The thick mud clung to him desperately, though Thrain's strength proved overwhelming. "Keep your feet up. Almost there," Thrain urged, his voice filled with encouragement and determination. Finally, with one last heave, Thrain pulled Ronan free from the mire, the boy landing safely on the solid ground beside the dwarf. He fell to his knees, gasping for breath, relief washing over him like a warm tide. "Good lad," Thrain exclaimed, a wide grin breaking across his weathered face. "You're safe now. Just keep your wits about you." Ronan looked up at the dwarf, gratitude flooding his heart. "Thank you, Thrain. I thought I was lost for good." "Never forget that darkness may surround you, but there are always those willing to help," Thrain replied, extending a hand to help the boy to his feet. "Now let's get you away from this cursed mire." As they moved together through the thick fog, Ronan marvelled at how Thrain navigated the terrain with confidence, stepping over treacherous patches and guiding him through the gloom. The air felt different around them, lighter somehow, as though the very presence of the dwarf kept the darkness at bay. "Why are you here?" Ronan asked, his voice steadier now as they pushed deeper into the mire, the fog swirling around them. "Patrolling these lands," Thrain replied, his tone both serious and kind. "The Mire of Shattered Souls is a place where evil stirs, preying on the lost and the fearful. I am sworn to protect those who stray too close. You are lucky I found you." Ronan nodded, his heart racing. "I didn't mean to come here. I thought I could find a shortcut." "The mire lures the unwary," Thrain said, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the shadowed edges of the swamp. "You are not the first to fall prey to its tricks, and you certainly won't be the last. But it's not your fault. You've shown great courage simply by seeking a way through." As they continued, Ronan noticed dark shapes flickering just beyond the edge of his vision, lurking in the shadows. The memory of the creatures that had haunted him filled him with dread, but whenever fear crept back, Thrain's presence was a steadying force, his axe glinting ominously in the low light as if warding off the dark. At last, the fog began to thin, and the trees of the mire finally gave way to solid ground. The boy could see the path ahead leading back toward his village, and the sight of it filled him with relief. "Look, we're almost there," Thrain said, his voice infused with encouragement. Ronan felt a rush of hope and gratitude. "Thank you for coming to find me, Thrain." The dwarf nodded, his expression serious but warm. "You carry that charm with you for a reason. The light of courage is within you too. Trust in it, and you'll always find your way." As they neared the edge of the swamp, Thrain gestured for Ronan to follow closely. "Remember, do not stray too close to the mire again. Its dark influence is insidious, and it will always try to draw the lost back into its depths." Ronan nodded earnestly, the memory of the swamp still fresh in his mind. "I won't, I promise." With a final nod, Thrain led the way toward the path, his presence a beacon of safety as they emerged from the shadows of the mire. Ronan watched, a sense of gratitude swelling in his chest. He had been saved by a warrior of light, a guardian who had not only rescued him, but also restored his hope. As they reached the edge of the swamp, Thrain smiled at Ronan. "You are safe now, young one. Keep that charm close and remember the strength you carry within you." With those words, the dwarf turned, his eyes scanning the darkened depths of the mire one last time before he began his patrol anew. Ronan stood there for a moment, feeling a mixture of awe and gratitude. He had encountered a hero, a protector, and in that moment he understood the power of courage and light, even in the darkest of places. Clutching the amulet tightly, Ronan began the journey home, his heart filled with determination. He would never forget Thrain Ironfist, the dwarf who had come to his aid, or the lesson the mire had taught him. In the darkest of places, there was always light, and he now carried that light within him. As Ronan made his way home, the relief of escaping the Mire of Shattered Souls began to wash over him. The swamp's sinister fog faded behind him, and the familiar sounds of the forest greeted him like a long-lost friend. But amidst the comfort of his surroundings, a sinking feeling crept into his heart. The memory of Thrain Ironfist's warning echoed in his mind. He had been lucky to escape the mire, but he couldn't shake the sense that he was still in danger. Despite the dread lingering in his chest, he was exhilarated to be back on solid ground, and he allowed himself to forget about the magical amulet that had saved him. Instead, he focused on the trees that danced in the wind and the warm sunlight filtering through the leaves. With each step, the memory of the amulet slipped further from his mind. However, as he ventured deeper into the woods, he stumbled upon a clearing he had never seen before. The grass was lush and vibrant, dotted with bright wildflowers, but a chill hung in the air. In the centre of the clearing stood a figure cloaked in shadows, her form half hidden yet beckoning, like a whisper only he could hear. She had wild hair that twisted like vines, and her eyes glinted with a strange, unsettling light that stirred a faint, uneasy memory in him. "Ah, little one," she crooned, her voice sweet like honey, but laced with an undercurrent of danger. "I've been waiting for you. You have such a brave heart, wandering through the woods all alone. Come, let me show you something truly magnificent." Ronan felt an inexplicable pull toward her, as if her words wrapped around him like tendrils of mist. Her presence reminded him of something, a story or warning he couldn't quite place. He approached cautiously, curiosity battling with his instincts. "Who are you?" "I am Lirael, the guardian of secrets," she replied, her lips curling into a smile that revealed too many teeth. "I can show you wonders beyond your imagination, but first you must trust me." A flicker of doubt crossed Ronan's mind, and for a moment he thought of his younger brother, Loren, and the strange lights that had drawn him into the swamp. But the thrill of adventure ignited his imagination. He had faced the mire, after all. What could possibly be worse than that? Lirael extended her hand, palm up, revealing a small shimmering token, a reflection of the amulet he had once clutched tightly. "This is a key, my dear, a key to secrets hidden deep within the sunken keep. You'll never forget your courage again if you come with me." Ronan's heart raced at the thought of discovering ancient treasures and stories untold. Without thinking, he nodded and took her hand, feeling a rush of energy course through him. The moment he did, the shadows around them twisted and deepened, and the ground beneath him seemed to shift. In an instant, the clearing transformed. The vibrant greenery turned to murky water, and the bright sky faded into a stormy grey. They stood at the edge of a vast sunken structure, its crumbling walls jutting out of the dark waters like jagged teeth. The sunken keep loomed before him, ominous and foreboding, a place steeped in mystery and danger. "Welcome to my domain," Lirael said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Here you will discover what true power lies within you, but first you must learn to embrace the shadows." Ronan's excitement turned to apprehension as he glanced back at the forest, the path to safety now obscured by the dark waters surrounding the keep. I can't stay here," he stammered, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. "Oh, but you must," Lirael insisted, her grip tightening around his hand. "You chose to trust me, and now you will uncover the secrets of the keep. The power you seek lies just below the surface. Your courage will be tested, and only then will you understand the true nature of your amulet." In that moment, the boy remembered the warnings of Thrain and the purpose of the amulet he had so foolishly forgotten. Panic surged through him as he struggled against Lirael's grip. "I want to go home," he cried, the shadows around him swirling with dark energy. Lirael's expression hardened, her sweet facade cracking to reveal a more sinister intent. "You cannot turn back now. The keep has chosen you, and its secrets will be revealed whether you wish it or not." With a swift motion, she yanked him toward the sunken structure, the waters of the keep rising to meet them. As the darkness closed in, Ronan's mind raced. He needed to escape, to remember the amulet that had once given him hope. Just as the waters began to engulf him, he called upon the memory of Thrain's words. He could still feel the weight of the amulet around his neck, its power shimmering just out of reach. "Amulet, help me!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the depths. In response, the amulet flared to life, its light cutting through the encroaching darkness. A surge of energy radiated from it, and Ronan felt himself being pulled upward, away from Lirael's grasp and the sunken keep. With a final burst of strength, he broke free from the water's hold, landing back on solid ground, breathless and disoriented. The clearing had returned to its original form, with the lush grass and bright wildflowers. But Lirael was gone, her presence dissipated like smoke. Ronan clutched the amulet tightly, realizing that it had saved him once again. He had narrowly escaped the fate of the sunken keep and the dark secrets it held. With newfound determination, he turned back toward the path leading home, vowing to never forget the lessons learned in the mire or the importance of his amulet. The Amulet of Luminara. Description: the Amulet of Luminara is a masterfully crafted pendant made of glimmering silver, with a radiant sapphire at its center that pulses with an inner light. This sapphire gently illuminates its surroundings with a calming, ethereal glow. Intricate designs of swirling vines and celestial patterns embellish the silver casing, symbolizing the union of light and nature. History: the Amulet of Luminara was forged in the ancient elven city of Eldoria, a city woven from the very essence of magic itself. Crafted over 1,000 years ago by Elandriel, a master enchanter and revered healer, the amulet was intended to be a beacon of hope during dark times. Elandriel believed that true courage exists within every soul, but it often needs a catalyst to fully awaken. Eldoria was concealed deep within the Whispering Woods, a mystical forest serving as a barrier between the realm of light and the encroaching shadows. The elves of Eldoria were long-time guardians of balance between these worlds, and Elandriel forged the amulet during an era of great peril, when the forces of darkness threatened to plunge the world into chaos. Legend tells that Elandriel imbued the amulet with the essence of the Luminara, ethereal beings of light who wandered the Whispering Woods. These beings embodied purity, wisdom, and the power to inspire courage in those who held the amulet. It is said that when the wearer calls upon the amulet's power, the Luminara awaken, offering strength and clarity in times of adversity. Crafting: The amulet of Luminara was crafted in a sacred grove known as the Grove of Dawn, where the first rays of sunlight gently touched the earth each morning. Here, Elandriel collected rare materials, including silver from the moonlit mountains and the sapphire-like tears of the Luminara themselves, shed during their midnight dances. As he forged the amulet, he chanted ancient incantations, binding the amulet with protective spells and blessings. Upon completion, the amulet was entrusted to the Guardians of Eldoria, passed down through generations as a sacred relic. Legend holds that the amulet chooses its own bearer, seeking those with pure hearts and the spirit of a true hero.